I also got a couple chat questions, Henry. So maybe one comes on the heels of this. Let's see. What is the deal? Well, this is Jed, and he's raised his hand, but he may have another question. He typed in, what is the deal with koans? Can I practice with koans on my own? What is the deal with koans? We just got a little sense of that, a taste of that from Natalie describing her experience. You know, you can take up these koans like Henry has done on the Waking Up app. Just and you're sitting, let them, one that you're drawn to, if you're so inclined, just to get very, very still and, you know, what is this? Or there are students who've been listening to all of that have come up with a couple that particularly resonate with a number of students. Not knowing is most intimate, and the entire earth is medicine. So, of course, you know, this is your practice. On the other hand, there's a deep and I think very wise tradition around koan training that one does it with a guide. So if it's, you know, if you're drawn to really taking up one of the initial, so to speak, breakthrough koans, and you know, perhaps in time when that gateless gate just vanishes, then starting in this amazing sort of koan curriculum that we've inherited. Sambo Zen, we're not alone, but there's a particular one that includes these famous volumes. We have some miscellaneous koans, and then the Mumonkan, Gateless Gate, Blue Cliff Record, Hekigan Roku, Book of Serenity, Shoya Roku. For that, I think one really does need a guide. Do you want to add something, Henry? This is your, well.
No, I think you said it beautifully. Why don't we take another sort of live question?
Okay, I just wanted to say, it made me think of this description of what it is that teachers in this tradition do, which is to be a Sherpa. You know, it's just a guide, someone who's been on that trail and can, you know, be a clear mirror in a sense. So, okay, Fiona?
Hello, Valerie. Hello, Henry. Thank you for taking our questions. I guess my question is for Henry, seeing it concerns one of his messages from the newsletter. It's the one, don't look back. Oh, do look back. Do look back.
I've forgotten what I said. What did I say?
Well, you say turn around, look back. It's like a great cavern behind you. And in meditation, I know this probably sounds incredibly naive, but how does one turn around? Is it the same as taking the backward step? And one's attention, you say take your attention from the world, but where do you place your attention then?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. Well, first of all, I think probably, I mean, hearing it now, I don't think my language was very good, really, actually. I think it isn't really, I think taking a backward step maybe catches it better. I'll tell you what, I'll try to say what I was trying to convey. At least I guess I was. It's a little while back now. But, you know, we're very habituated to only sort of delivering our attention sort of into the world in front of us kind of thing. This is not very Zen, by the way. This is more of a, you know, the non-duality teachers would teach like this more than Zen would. But you know, we're very habituated to putting our attention right into the world in front of us, that we see in front of us, kind of thing. You know, it's all there in front of us. But we're not very habituated to being aware that there's actually a great space kind of behind us. And how do you, and it's real, you know, you can find it, you can, people record this, they sort of drop into it. And then the world in front sort of seems a little bit smaller because there's this great space around, that's sort of behind us and enveloping around what we're seeing in front of us. You know, this is what, you know, that famous guy Douglas Harding, who talked about the headless way and finding he had no head while he was walking in Dharamsala or in somewhere in the Himalayas, and when he was a young man, he suddenly had this, he basically had, you know, some kind of Kensho-like experience, and he felt the way he phrased it was like realizing he didn't have a head, you know, and that's a description of finding this great space of awareness that envelops, you know, our sort of view of the world out there. It's beautiful, really, and it's a great. It's very. When he read about Zen later, he said, that was, you know, this Kensho it was like that. It was like what happened to me, or Satori. It was like what happened to me. So it's only another way of sort of coming at this experience where basically this, you know, this sort of fixation between subject in here and everything being an object out there breaks down, or just is you know, is released, and there's one great sort of spaciousness without a center, without a subject and an object. And it's another way of sort of trying to convey that. I think that's what I was trying to get at. And I do think that saying turn around probably isn't a very good way to put it, actually. But I mean, nothing really is that good of a way to put it, because it's trying to help us release our sort of investment in what's in front of us that seems to be facing us. And I mean, it's not denying that that's going on, but actually there's another way of letting that be there, but not being so kind of invested in it. And sort of, it's like almost like falling back and finding, wow, there's this space back here, kind of thing. And some think that Yao Shan, who said take the backward step, I mean, it's quoted by Dogen in significant places, and sometimes it's attributed to Dogen, but it's not. It's this Yao Shan, who was like 8th century master, like 600 years before Dogen or something. He said it, take the backward step that shines the light inward. And, you know, none of this language is that clear. You know, it's like when you get this sort of release of subject and object, that division of subject from object dropping, when that release happens, and we do get this sort of really bigger, wider sense of consciousness, of things, of a sort of great wide reality somehow sort of shows itself, original face, you know, that's always been here. It's then that we might find some of the weird language, oh my God, this is what it was talking about, you know. So I hope that's some help, Fiona. Let's take another.
There's another chat. The next one is it truly the case that sitting Zazen wholeheartedly directly helps all sentient beings? How can the truth of that be experienced directly and not be a simple belief? Beautiful question. Yeah. This whole world sitting. But how might that be? One version of this that came up recently, thinking about the great suffering that's going on now in the world. There's this sense, this, of course, this entire body that is to be experienced. It's the invitation of this practice. And maybe we began with just we hear about it, and there's some inclination toward that, maybe a sense of trust. But then, it's just the menu. You're here to taste the feast. How can I discover this one entirety that is also sometimes, referred to as just now? So there's a phrase, vertical time, which is like all pointers, limited, but everything going on now. Everything. And there's no gap. I think Henry may have something to say because this is so beautiful, but it brings to mind an experience that a practitioner shared recently since the invasion began in Ukraine. And she was sitting on a bench by the meadow where her husband's cremains are interred, and feeling in Europe, very sad. And she had closed her eyes, and the thought came, I want to kill Putin. Stark and so sad. She opened her eyes, and this wide meadow, that's how I got it from what she said. She said there was a wave of love rose up. I pictured, as she described it, when the sun hits the dew in the morning and this mist just kind of rises up, this wave of love, and nothing was excluded. Nothing is excluded. So how can it not? It's not, I've heard Yamada Kohn and others say there's no reasoning at all. So I don't mean to be explaining it. I apologize if that's what it sounds like. It's just an invitation to taste and see, and offer ourselves to this. What a wonder that we're the whole body sitting, and all of it in this now, in this body, this one boundless compassion. Just one more comment. I was supposed to give an intro talk last week on what to do with thoughts in meditation. And I was going to refer to Yaoshan, think not thinking, and kind of unpack that a little. And I found I couldn't do it. And I was just kind of musing on that. And my partner, Scott, just asked me, what helps you? In the face of this situation, I just couldn't speak about at that moment. How do we deal with thoughts? So what helps you? And what came up was this boundless compassion. Without thinking, before knowing. But there's just not the slightest gap. So that's what we have a chance to express in this practice and to discover, I feel. Henry, would you like to speak to this?
No, you spoke so very beautifully. Very beautifully. Thank you, Valerie. It's that, yeah, I get it, that ripple of love that ripples in everything. Sort of, it's suddenly, everything's rippling with it. And you can't explain it. You can't explain it. But it shows that, it somehow reveals that there is some level, or I don't know, dimension or whatever of reality where it's all one. And on that level, it's all okay. Even the things that seem utterly not okay. And it's not explainable, and it's not a cop out. It's real, and I remember one student who, I mean, it's the worst loss, the worst loss a person can go through, really. She'd been through, and it was just, I mean, the inconsolable. I mean, how could you be consoled when what had happened had happened, and one day she was actually staying in Mount Climb for a while. One day she just found Mu in her heart. There was a little Mu in her heart, and it somehow, I don't think it's like it changed everything. I don't know. I didn't know that it did. I don't think so. But it showed something else, or some other way of being that was real also, and that didn't change everything, but it was different as well. It was a discovery that made a difference to her in her grief, but because not just random individual comfort, it was because of finding that somehow there's something more common to all, that is real. So, whatever we call it, original face is not, original nature. Anyway, let's take another. Should we take a spoken one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jed?
Yeah, hello. I'd like to maybe just do a follow-up to my question that I had put in the chat, and just to give you a sense of background, I tend to get stuck in my head. That's where I live my life, and I've been practicing mindfulness for 4 years, 3-4 years, something like that. And I came across this Zen thing when Henry, you had sat in on Rick Hansen's Wednesday night thing a year or so ago, and that got me interested in what you guys were doing. So my question, my follow-up question is, barring any ability to hop on a bus and come out there to Santa Fe, can I go and buy a copy of The Gateless Gate and start reading it and doing the koan thing just on my own? Is that a thing?
Well, I think so. I think anybody's free to do what they want, But it's not the it may not be the most, I mean, it may be interesting to you and try it. But you also can, I mean, we are, I'm sorry I'm talking, I should have handed it to you, Valerie, but I'll just say, we are sort of already doing and working on doing more online Zen teaching, precisely for people who aren't local. And there's a lot of people joining that, and we think there'll be more. Valerie, what about you? What would you say?
Yeah, it's just such a joy to work with people in this one-to-one and koan training, and the online. There's just no wall. I'm amazed at how vivid and and immediate it is. So we see people all over the world, and
Is there a formal process then to start something like that?
you can just contact Johanna and she'll put you in touch. Yeah.
Or come to the Tuesday class, right? That'd be a starting place.
I've sat in on a few of those. I'm planning on sitting next Tuesday, but after that, I just took a job, which will, I'll be at work on Tuesday afternoons. I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada, so it's an hour earlier than you guys.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. For people who have a long practice, a real established practice, settled, and who in some sense are asking these fundamental questions, the real sort of original face questions.
I think, Valerie, I think I mentioned to you, or somebody on that Tuesday night class, that what I know of Zen, I read through the Three Pillars book, and I read your book, Henry, and I have to say that it both intrigues me and horrifies me at the same time.
Yeah. So just keep dabbling and putting your
not
foot in the
sure.
water. And let's go to thank you. Let's go to another question. Thanks, Jed.
My question is, if the self is illusory, then who is focusing on the breath, or sights, sounds, etc.? This breaks my brain. Oh, wonderful. Get out of your head and into the body. But, how great to have our assumptions, our concepts just broken open. And this is a wonderful koan in itself. Mm-hmm. It's actually a quite famous one from Basui. Who hears? Who is hearing? Who is breathing? Who is walking? Who is talking? And that can kind of distill even into just who. And be, you're sitting. It's not a discursive question. You're sitting itself is the question. This who. So the invitation is just, this great curiosity, but absorption, really. Just breathing. Just standing up. Just walking. So you've named, one of the root koans. And they aren't, as I said, they're not discursive. So, it's a fun way to say it. It breaks my brain. It's beyond reasoning and at the same time utterly recognizable. Utterly recognizable. And just a glimpse of this who, or what is this? Or to really hear just one sound. I think it was Yasutani who, in a session, I had this always at the end of the day when there were all these sounds sounding, gongs and would block the traditional rituals. His closing comment would be, if you can hear just one sound as it truly is, your practice is at an end. There's a kind of resolution. And then, you're compelled to practice. Interestingly, then for the whole world tends to happen. So, go with this.
Exactly. I mean, can I just put a
Yeah.
tiny little thing on that, Valerie? It's like, you know, the very point they're saying, well, you know, they say there's no self. Well, the point is you're not, you know, there's one thing to think about that. It's a totally different thing to experience it. And the purpose of the koan basically is to help us experience it, break our brain and help us experience it.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of the koan.
Yeah.
Because it's not something to think, just like Valerie said, it's not discursive. It's not a matter for thinking about, it's for experiencing. That's what the Zen view tends to be.
Yeah.
Should
When I took up my, oh, go ahead. When
No,
I just comment, when I took up my first koan, I was given by my teacher for the first week. I thought about it every waking moment. I, you know, turned that question in every direction. And I mean, I remember about 7 days in, I was at a stoplight in my car, and I remember to this day exactly what intersection and exactly where I was. And I, you know, asking this question. And I suddenly realized I was giving myself a terrible headache. And it just stopped. I'd let it go. You know, it's like some people describe you just run into the wall of reasoning, of that kind of questioning. And then you fall into the koan.
Oh, nice. Hey, listen, I've just got to close the back door here. So, because there's some quite loud music out there. I'll be right back.
Okay. Irene, well, let's wait just a moment because I'd like Henry to hear your question.
Okay, I'll wait. Thank you. This
Yeah.
is so great.
Here's one. Will the Zazenkai have a focus on Chioni? That's my intention for the talk. Yeah, this wonderful haiku, a woman, you know, famous haiku master who Natalie Goldberg wrote about in her book, 3 Simple Lines. And I've been trying to do a kind of Women in Zen series and using, you know, taking the opportunity of these right now of the Zazenkai to take up a woman and sort of as the, you know, core of the talk. And I got really drawn to her haiku. One of them comes to mind: clear water, no front, no back. Irene.
Okay, hi. Thank you. This is great. What a good idea. Q&A, boy, and you're getting some great questions. Okay, so a lot of my questions have been answered in a way because I was thinking about, you know, asking you about Dokusan and about how it works online, but you obviously both are experiencing something really strong and powerful in working with people online. So I'll go to my question number 2, which is, do you does everyone assume that they will have a kensho, or is it like what we're here for? And what if you know, like, if you don't have it, or you don't want it, or I don't, you know, what is your thinking on that?
Go for it, Henry.
Okay. Well, Irene, it's a great question. I mean, honestly, I think if you're going to do koan training, I mean, I see them, the way I've been trained in them is as this incredible help if you've had a kensho experience. That's how I've been trained in them myself. Like, they help you once you've, you know, collapsed into this world of infinite oneness and emptiness, whatever, and you don't know what to do. Then, well, the koan path will lead you on deeper and deeper and more, both deeper, but also kind of back to ordinariness as well. So it's a great question, because I mean, it bothers me. I have to say, first of all, I think koans can be really helpful in some ways. I hear it from people without that, just a kind of brings them into some really beautiful space in their sitting. It's not kensho, but very beautiful, and like some deep state of clarity and peace and fulfillment and sort of lovingness sometimes that they hadn't found before. And that's because of sitting with a koan. It can do that sometimes, and great. And what was the other thing I was going to say? Something else about how they can. And then another thing, is like it's a real problem if we're saying if we're saying, well, you gotta have this experience. That's really going against many of the sort of basic principles of practice, which is like not striving to get something else, not striving to seeking something that isn't already here. And then what a problem if that does happen, and then somebody thinks, oh great, I've got it now. Well, absolutely no way. That's wrong too. So wrong to seek, wrong to cling to after. It's fraught with difficulty. And I mean, it's true that the koan training system helps with all that, but still, there's a lot to be said against it. But on the other hand, we do have sort of shifts in our sense of things, and they follow. They're not random. There are discoveries to be made about this very moment. I mean, ways of experiencing it that we might not sort of already have tasted. And koans, it seems to me, sort of preserve a method for exploring this very moment. And it's beautiful that they do. But I mean, one reason I have this program, Original Love, is precisely this. I want, one of the best things about an awakening experience at Kensho is that you find somehow often that there's a sense of a sort of great belovedness. Valerie was talking about boundless compassion. There's a great belovedness you sense everywhere, that, ripple of love and, whatever wave of love. That's sort of one of the features often of Kensho. But you don't have to have Kensho to find that. And so I'm doing this Original Love program to help people get taste of that without Kensho. I mean, that's part of the point of it, really, is that it's absurd to be sitting around waiting for something to happen and to be trying to hope something happens. Is a really poor way of practicing, basically, I think. I mean, maybe that's not quite the right thing to say, because somehow it's got its weird wisdom too, maybe. But it's a good question, Irene. Valerie, could you speak to it?
Oh, I thought you did a really good job. And the difficulty in our tradition with this Kensho, which is such a experience out of the blue of grace. Henry described it, this shift, this resolve, this belonging, utter belonging, belovedness. But we know that many of us know that as the second fruit of Zen. And it does launch one into koan training. It can. But it is completely counterproductive to sit trying to gain it. And so there's a strong hindrance there to just entrust ourselves to this sitting. One teacher says, make ourselves fetchable, but catch ourselves if we start to reach for something you know, as if there's something outside to get, something to fix, something to add, something that's lacking. That's not it. It's coming home. It's just, it's already here. It's right now. So I'm a great fan of original love, and I have experienced this quality of belovedness when Henry's been teaching these sort of zones, or the cart track, you would say, that is not the awakening track. But wow, it really can happen. And yeah, it's
yeah, I kind of feel, so if it's okay for me to jump in, Valerie, I feel like the best thing is to just be doing fruitful practice, you know, forget about, you know, random awakening befalling us. Just do fruitful practice.
Yeah.
And if it does, it does, you know.
Yeah.
But we're having good practice anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, good in quotes, you know, helpful practice.
Yeah. And just, you know, when Three Pillars of Zen, this classic book that probably almost everybody here has read, if not everybody, you know, I really read it again sometimes, certainly parts of it, but that is a look into Japanese Zen in the basically 50s, 60s, in a context where sesshin, or retreat, people were openly pushing for this experience. And I think Zen, of course, is changing in the West. It's evolving. And this is, that just doesn't fit. And I'm so glad that we can sort of take off that, throw off that cape, that mantle, whatever, you know, just, yeah. And we also, in Japan, the tradition would be at a sesshin at the end, you would actually have a ceremony for whoever had had kensho. And none of my teachers have done that. I mean, it's some still do because of that tradition, but I think that it's so healthy that this is just your practice for you alone, and to take that pressure away, and allow. I like that word that I will always associate with Henry. Allowing.
Thank you. I really am so glad you said that, because I think the reason I even have been thought of this is because I've been reading that book, and I was reading this whole section about these people. They were just kind of going crazy until they got kensho, and I thought, wait a second, am I going to have to do that? You know. So
Yeah.
you know, yeah. This is great. Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Really.
Nice to hear you, see you, Irene. Great.
Good to see you.
Hey, Valerie, can I pick up the long one about trauma?
Sure.
Let me just give, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, ding, 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 ding. Yesterday I realized after years of difficulty, I have developmental trauma, which is trauma from early infancy. As I'm working now with a therapist and mentor on these issues, I'm realizing that my over 55 years on the spiritual path of meditation, I've been covering up the most sacred, most holy meeting place on the path, my own private pain and suffering, with strong beliefs about needing to awaken. Somehow related, right? I'm enjoying meditation with the sangha regularly, but I'm wondering how best to practice and not cover up this deepest place of separation. I sometimes feel I can't be a Zen practitioner because I have to complete this work first. Thank you so much for your thoughts on this. I mean, I'll tell you, I mean, I can relate to this very much. I had developmental trauma too when I was 6 months old. I won't go to the story, but you know, and it's still yeah, it's still in me, you know. I'm just more open to it, and I love it, and you know, I just love it. And I don't see why you have to do one or the other. I mean, I think it's really, I feel somehow probably, you know, trauma, the word you know, the history of it. I was just listening to Daniel Ellenberg the other night with Rick Hansen in his cities. He was saying how, you know, in his years as a psychologist, he's seen how the word trauma, you know, 50, 40 years ago was reserved for a few rare people who really had it. And these days, there's a view that probably everybody or nearly everybody has some trauma, you know, because, well, he went into why, because, you know, stressors that we all have and stuff, you know, especially at the young ages when we're so defenseless and likely to be alone with it at times. And I wonder whether, I mean, like you're saying here, how sacred and holy that is. And I mean, you know, let's not forget, like, I love the way in Buddhism, the first reality, the first truth is suffering. That's where it begins. It's like, that is the beginning of practice. That's the beginning of the path. And some ways, that's the whole path. You know, the whole path can be really the thread of suffering. You know, there's if we just follow the suffering, we're probably on the right track somehow, you know. And so studying or being with our pain and our trauma and letting it do what it needs to do, you know, that's the you know, like Gabor Mate, you know, these days is so well known, and he says the wisdom of trauma has wisdom, you know, and we, how much we might think of it as some bad thing I got to overcome and get rid of something. What if it's the wisest thing in us, you know? And somehow, how do we let it be what guides our practice? Let it be the heart of our practice. And I think in some way that's the encouragement of that first noble truth, that there is suffering. That's why the whole path unfolded from suffering. It's the doorway, the gateway. We got the portal, you know, it's the transformative element, is the suffering. It's just to let it be, and rather than fight it, resist it, judge it, you know, let it be, you know. And where does that go? Well, I mean, who knows? Maybe Kensho is some weird kind of fulfillment of trauma. I don't know, you know, maybe there's some way in which, I mean, I know that those researchers these days who talk about spiritual experiences or mystical experiences or whatever as being kind of like trauma in some ways. And they also have it's like they talk about like there's so much benevolence in them that you get like a post-benevolence syndrome as opposed to PTSD. I don't know, you know, so just some thoughts on that.
Yeah. Wonderful. You're mentioning Gabor Mate and your work with him, but as well, one student has earnestly been, you know, really sitting with Mu, went to, and who had, you know, this formative trauma. You know, family had to escape another country. He was just a baby child, young child. So, and he's been working so hard. And I just recently saw him with, you know, this Mo practice, just working at it. And he just looked radiant. And he said he had done this 4-day workshop with Gabor Mate, and something shifted for him just in his practice, that he realized that he was saying Mu, and he said, in my head, you know, and all this was just up here and it wouldn't go below here. It just wouldn't. And when he realized that somehow in this workshop, I mean, it was not about koans, but he, you know, it opened his heart enough that Mu just fell down into his body. And now he says sitting is, I mean, this isn't going to happen to everybody, but for him, it became this ease and even joy. You know, just Mu sitting. And I, you know, just to see someone have that shift because of, openly engaging their trauma.
Mm.
And
That's
the
beautiful.
wisdom of being able to then see what's happening in your body. I was beautiful.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, and see there it is. Like, why should you do only one? Look at that.
There's one question, Henry. Please give some advice about sitting with a sickened heart about Ukraine.
Oh. Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it
I mean,
relates to what you
don't
just
fight it. Don't fight it.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, don't fight it.
Yeah.
What advice is needed, really? Why wouldn't we have a sickened heart? Why wouldn't we be heartbroken about it? Are we supposed to fix that? What's wrong with being heartbroken about what's going on?
Right. And that line that I've said to myself, when your heart is breaking, let it break all the way. The end of that poem by Thich Nhat Hanh that we've mentioned, of course, because of his passing, but then with this, the tremendous suffering, Ukraine and Russia. Please call me by my true names. And he goes through, I obviously this clear, that's me. I'm the one suffering. I'm the one inflicting the suffering, all these different versions of that. And then toward the end of the poem, it's about these tears that never cease and the joy that never ceases. Again, it's this boundlessness that includes everything. And there's no economy of exchange in that at all. There's no evasion at all. You're thoroughly immersed in all of it. And brokenhearted.
Brokenhearted and open-hearted.
Like that suffering that transmutes that, into compassion.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this path is, in some way, this is what it's for, isn't it? Ukraine, Putin, the repeated trauma, generation upon generation, and here's this practice, the Dharma. I mean, isn't this what it addresses? But I don't think it means it's got a fix for us. Not exactly that. Well, I think it's, this is longish for our Thursday nights. Why don't we be winding up? What do you think, Valerie?
Yeah, I'll just save the chat. And we can circle back various opportunities certainly thank everyone for your questions. And we'll share them all. Henry and I will share them, and they just do tend to get spoken to. It's very helpful.
Right. Hey, we'll do this again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, thanks for it. It seemed like there's a fertile, a lot of questions. So we'll start doing this more often. Does that sound okay to everybody? I mean, would that be okay? Well, there's some thumbs up. Let's see. Okay. So I think we'll be doing it more often. Yeah, because often, I mean, there's time when we got to give a talk and it's kind of like, well, okay, I'll just pick up the next koan kind of thing. But maybe, maybe better just to say, let's see what you want to hear about. Maybe you don't want to hear about the next koan. So yeah, I think we'll try to do this more often. Thanks so much, everybody. Of course, everybody who brought in questions, but also thank you everybody just for being here. It's really wonderful. It's really heartwarming. This is something we can do, right? Just gather. Ah. I'll tell you what I do for Ukraine. I remember several times a day, I think of Gandhi and that famous line of his, what is it? I'm sure many of you probably know it, like tyrants come and go. Love and truth remain. But think of it, every tyrant there's ever been has gone. They all fall in the end, he said. Only love and truth remain. They'll never fail, love and truth. So something like that. Okay.
Thank you, Henry.